Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Thank you so much for doing this at such a short notice. I just finished watching Jehanabad and I requested your team and they were, ready to, get this chat started. But the reason why I wanted to talk to you is the big question, the why of it. The fact that you come from a family of notable names like Mr. Ghatak and Mahashweta Devi, you have a, family of critics, actors, film writers. Uh, you know, did it ever influence your decision? I'm sure it does. But how much of that really plays a part in you selecting a role? And then it becomes also detrimental you saying no to certain roles. How much of that aspect defines your film journey, film career?
In general, you mean, right? Not
Yes, yes, yes.
particularly pertain. Yeah, no, okay. So no, it doesn't. It doesn't influence my decisions directly. I mean, while choosing a particular role or while deciding to do something in particular, be it acting, be it taking up an acting job, or be it wanting or deciding to direct something, my lineage doesn't really play a direct role in my choices. However, I think courtesy my lineage, courtesy the fact that I grew up in an atmosphere where standard conversations were usually about films and literature and music and theater, uh, they have played a certain part in making me the way I am today. I mean, it kind of in creating my headspace, the headspace that it is not a static headspace; it keeps changing. It's an ever evolving headspace. But yes, I think that the genesis of my of the person that I am, of the way I think, that does have some contribution from the atmosphere that I grew up in. But yeah, it's more of a sort of a subconscious effect rather than a conscious flowing thought that okay, I belong to this family. These people were connected to me, were related. I'm related to these people, so I make these choices. No, I'm an individual, and that is how I've grown up, and I don't think like that. It's more the atmosphere, the ambience in which I grew up that sometimes has a subconscious effect on the choices I make, and those choices do not only pertain to my film choices but also life choices, I think.
Okay, so let me rephrase this question. Though I like the way you have taken this forward, but I want to understand this one thing. This thinking actors tag comes to you by default, whether it is your lineage or the kind of choices that you have made. How much of that really impacts your decisions in choosing, let's say, a project like Jahanabad and maybe declining a few of the others who you've decided that you do not want to be a part?
Sometimes such tags can actually vex you, can actually tire you, especially with someone like me who has been working for more than 2 decades now, primarily in Bengali and then, of course, also in Hindi. Those tags can actually make you feel rather tired sometimes, and that has happened with me. I mean, I sometimes feel like, मतलब क्यों मुझे कलरफुल रोल्स नहीं मिलते यार हर बारी ऐसा क्यों होता है कि I'll have to play that little oh really kind of that kind of a person. I also want to kind of break out and get into more flowy kind of things. So yeah, it has its perks. It also has its sort of flip side. So I mean, like everything else in life, it has both sides.
But you started your career with the most popular theme in Bengali. When it's come, I'm talking about Feluda. Every household knows about it. That was how popular we're talking about. And then you go ahead and say that, there are certain jackets that the actors really get branded into. The fact that you took almost a decade to probably branch out of Bengali, come to the, so to speak, mainstream Hindi cinema also with Kahani, that was your Hindi debut. Why that long a time? And was that a conscious decision that now you also want to probably try, your basically go ahead associate yourself with directors who are also working in the Hindi cinema, for that matter? Because obviously, with Kahani, the association was both ways.
So, firstly, playing Tokshe was something that was just something that came along the way, and I was very young back then. I was all of 21, and it's an offer that at 21 you can't even think of refusing, and that's how it happened. And I really thoroughly enjoyed my experience with Shondip Rai and the entire family. and the whole journey, and it kind of catapulted me immediately to a certain degree of fame because, as you mentioned yourself, it becomes a household name very easily. And the first film of the franchise, it was incredibly successful, and then 3 years later the second film came, and that was also very successful. But soon afterwards I realized that playing Topshe can actually bracket you as an eternal brother. So that can actually become a bit of a hindrance, because by the time I started playing Topshe when in the year 2003, and by the time it was 2008 and I was still playing Topshe, 5 years had passed. I had grown up, and alongside playing Topshe, I was doing other films where I was sort of romancing and doing other things which sort of do not really go very well with the idea of Topshe. So then I kind of decided that I think I'm old enough to step aside and step out of the shoes of Topshe. And I felt like that I would like to study cinema. So I left on a scholarship to England to do my master's in filmmaking. And as far as journeying into the Hindi space is concerned, that was never, ever, ever on the cards. It happened purely by accident when Shujoy wanted to cast me in Kahani, and it happened like that entire process that happened, I think, within a span of 10 days. I was still in Europe when I got cast for Kahani, and I had to cut short my, I finished my master's course and I was touring the continent when I got Sujoy's call, and I had to kind of curtail my continental trip to rush back to Calcutta, like 10, 12 days before my scheduled arrival back. And it just happened. And then even after we shot for Kahani, none of us really expected it to be so big. Also, probably explains why even after Kahani released, I did not make a move to Bombay, or I did not make a conscious switch to Bombay, because I was still it was still not in my sort of, it did not feature in my sort of list of plans in my head. And that is how, and I always wanted to make films myself, which I've been doing. And then in 2017, we also started our little own company of production. And I think it's 2018 onwards that sort of the second stint in Hindi started slowly with Pari, and then eventually in 19 came Bulbul, and in end of 20 came Bulbul, and 20 also saw Ram Prasad Ki Tevi happening. And I think it's about the same. So it's kind of strange in a way, because I think while the whole world was sort of waiting and sulking under the pandemic, I think I kind of started my second Hindi stint in full throttle at about the same time. I shot Aranyak between the two waves, the first and the second. I got the call from for Aranyak, and we started doing Aranyak's readings and like table reads and everything. All of that started deep into while we were deep into the pandemic, the lockdown. So it's been a bit of a strange journey, especially in the last 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, because it's become a way more hectic. It's become way more sort of, I constantly keep shuttling between Kolkata and Mumbai. Both these places have become home for me. And also, last 2 years have been pandemic years, right? 2020 and 21. But I don't really see much of a sort of a pause in my work schedule, not after the first 4 months of the first wave.
So, pardon me, this is like going to be a cliche question, but unfortunately, let's say we're talking about cinema in Bengal, that's still bracketed as regional cinema and doesn't really have a pan-India presence. Do you think, as an actor who's delved in both the spheres, it is true? And being a part of Hindi cinema and these projects that you've been associated with, that has now made you a pan-India name, or that's not a statement which is entirely correct?
No, it's part. I think it's correct to a large extent, because whether we like it or not, we have to accept that despite making quite interesting content in Bengal, and I myself have featured in a lot of them, I think Bengali cinema hasn't yet managed to become what Southern films have. Southern films have become sort of a pan-Indian phenomenon right now. Bengali films haven't managed anything even remotely close to that. So we have to accept it. But I wouldn't be very bothered about that if I was doing only Bengali work. I would want to sort of work towards the betterment of Bengali cinema. But it wouldn't bother me that अरे यार देख लो मैं सिर्फ बंगाली फिल्में कर रहा हूँ इसीलिए मेरे को पूरे देश में कोई पहचानता नहीं है. That is not how my head works. However, having worked in the Hindi space and more frequently in the last couple of years, I see the acceptance from the pan-Indian audience who otherwise wouldn't know me. It's not a question of comparison here. That if I would be doing only Bengali films, then only Bengalis or watchers or viewers of Bengali films would know me. Now that I'm doing pan India, and it's not a question of comparison. It's more a question of the exposure, the pan Indian exposure, not just as an actor but as an artist, as an individual that I'm getting while working here, and all that I can take away from my experience here. And if I can remotely, even if I can think of investing that or using that back home for further development of Bengali content.
Okay. Coming back to Jehanabad, the song, which is a very, very crucial aspect in the film, Kala Suraj Kale Badal. I was just speaking to my husband and he told me how this was also a regular song with Sehmat, the Sabda Hashmi Trust, where filmmakers and people, like-minded people, really associate. And, they talk about the change that's much needed. So it has been part of that entire leftist movement. Unfortunately, there is a terminology that people who have a certain ideology, they're being termed as urban Naxals these days. And you are a very vocal person to talk about it. So I really wanted your answer to it, considering you are also part of a project that also speaks about that larger question.
Honestly, this particular terminology, it defeats my understanding and whatever little wisdom that I have from my experience and from whatever little education I have obtained from reasonably respectable institutions of this country and also abroad. A coinage like this, I think it just defeats my understanding. It's beyond my understanding. I don't think I am intelligent enough to understand this particular coinage called urban Naxal. So I would not want to comment much on that because I haven't managed to take myself to that level where I could actually comprehend the genesis of a terminology like that, what it means, or whether it is derogatory, whether it is coined to impose derogation on urban Naxal. It escapes me. I think it's a very clever term which I haven't really managed to comprehend with my very limited abilities. So it's a little beyond me. And so I wouldn't want to talk much about it. And I don't know if your question was also about whether playing a character like that in Jehanabad, was that also about that? Or
yeah, I just wanted to, because it was going back to what I started this interview by asking you, your choices, when you make as an actor. Does all of the belief also be, and if you get a story like this, which probably in some way, I'm not justifying any kind of violence here, but in some way aligns with certain ideas, which actually is revolutionary, do you actually think about it? Or it's plain acting that you're doing at that
time? No, I mean, every individual, they stand for a certain ideology, whether political or otherwise. And it is not necessary that as an actor, I always identify or I subscribe to that person's ideology. I can also be completely antithetical to that person's ideology while playing that part. But I just have to be aware of what ideology does this man stand for. And I repeat, by ideology, I do not only mean officially political ideology, I also mean the philosophy which defines a person, the personal philosophy. Whereas in this particular case, in Jehanabad's case, I think the person that I play in Jehanabad, he officially belongs to a certain ideology. And I, being a Bengali and having very radical thinkers like Shraddha Devi or Ritvik Khatak in my family, goes without saying that I have had my share of my brush with leftist ideas. I also come from Bengal, which has been under 34 years of left rule, although that kind of constitutional left has got nothing to do with the kind of left that we are talking about in Jehanabad. That's a more revolutionary, armed rebellion kind of left. And I will not cower out of saying that I think that the cause that the leftists have fought for, they often I have sympathized with them time and again, but definitely I haven't sympathized or subscribed to the means that they have adopted to not all leftists but ultra leftists. For instance, the Maoists or the People's War Group, outfits like these, which the kind of means that they have adopted in their attempt to reach the end, as also portrayed in Jehanabad. I would definitely not support that, and nothing can actually bring me to justify the scale of violence that these people had resorted to. But in terms of the core philosophy, I think yes. I think I have I've grown up in a sort of a leftist atmosphere, and I have tried to take the good things from it while being very wary of the dogmatic part of it, which can also affect you as a young individual.
Right, absolutely. Two final questions, Parambrata. Right now, the atmosphere, I am taking my cue from this word that you've used, is such, blame it on social media or just the people's nagging need to agitate. Many politicians, pressure groups, they go ahead and comment on a film, call for a ban on the film. It could be about any topic whatsoever. And it's just become a norm that needs to be called out. Have you faced such a thing with your associations, with your film projects?
Yes, I think I have actually. I think people jump to conclusions very easily, very quickly, and it's got a lot to do with what you're venting out. The right at the beginning of this cult film called Munna Bhai MBBS. I think if you remember, there's a scene where Mr. Sunil Dutt kind of stops a pickpocket and tells him that ये लोग देख रहे हो तुम सारे जो उनके जिंदगी में जो भी मुश्किलें हैं, these people are actually finding you to be the root of all their personal problems, and they're going to take it out on you right now. Would you want to face that? Would you want to bear the brunt of that? You'll die probably facing that. So, and it has been a common practice now. When people see a pickpocket, instead of taking him to the administration or the police, it was a common practice of kind of beating that person to pulp, sometimes even to death, something as macabre as that. And I think the social media trolling is sort of an extension of that, sort of a virtual extension of that. I mean, there's no dearth of problems for people. There's also there's no dearth of time for a lot of people. So you just vent out your dopamine, your adrenaline, or your negative adrenaline, and everything that all the hormones that kind of cumulatively keep affecting you up in your head. And so it's very easy for you to access certain people on social media because of social media these days. It's become this one big what do you call that, like where people are taken for justice or for execution in medieval times, that sort of that punishment ground or whatever. And I think that there's a huge lot of people, a hell lot of people out there in the virtual world, some real people, some bots, who kind of have started treating this more as a punishment ground or a judgment ground rather than a mean to connect and to share, which was, I think, originally the idea of social media. But I think that is kind of turned on its head these days quite a bit.
Okay. Before I let you go, that's a very interesting answer. It's an interesting way to put it. I just wanted to understand. I had this again a question that was nagging in my head because I'm a Bihari. Wanted to know, because you have a close association with Bihar, Bengal. How did you get the accent right? Playing Deepak Kumar.
So as you might know, as you might understand, that there are there's a huge population of Biharis in Calcutta, like a huge, really big, um, because Calcutta happens to be the nearest big city, much closer than Mumbai. Um, so that helped. Also, I think Rajiv and Satyanshu, both of them being Biharis, originally being Biharis, that really, really helped because I discovered something very unique that uh, I thought Bengali is the only language where we do not use gender or sometimes the singular plural while attaching the suffixes. But I just realized that the Bihari Hindi also does that, and it was so funny. It was such अपना लोग के साथ रहो. And I, being a non-native Hindi speaker and who would be rather careful about speaking Hindi, and when I would read the script, I was like, अरे यार राजीव ये तो अपने लोग के साथ रहो होगा ना? नहीं नहीं सर, हम भी आप जैसे ही है, हम भी अपना लोग ही बोलते हैं. I was like, oh really? I didn't know that. So it was purely courtesy Rajiv and Satyanshu. I think that the tonality, the diction, whatever little I have managed to bring on board. As far as the accent part is concerned, I think it's purely because of them.
Great, great. It's a great show. I'm looking forward to the second part, the second season of it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I finished it at 3 a.m. because I wanted to do this interview. I wanted to finish all the episodes before I get out to talking to you. It was really great. I have enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to season 2 as well. Thank you so much, Parambrata, for doing this.
Thank you very much, Griha. Thank you.
Thank you. You take care. Bye.